I was reading this fascinating article today. It's written by Sebastian Morello, and it's called Can Hermetic Magic Rescue the Church? Part 1, Acknowledging the Crisis and Breaking the Spell. And as I was reading through it, I just thought this was one of the best written articles to date that I've read. It's 11 pages long, and I just thought, I printed it out and I just thought I'd make a commentary on it, because he touched on one point that was so critical in this article that I said, yes, I think everybody can acknowledge this. And it brought me back to a young Carmelite monk in Spain that had been invited to their general council in Rome. And he spoke about the fact, look, if we were authentic Carmelites, this generation that's vegan and that's looking to save the planet, they would see in us an answer to what they're searching for, because we had this ascetic life. We were close to the earth as such. Monasticism was a they made their own food, they grew their own food. I mean, this was the reality of monastic life. If you ever go to Mount Athos, you see a lot of the time them growing grapes and food there on the holy mountain. But so anyway, I just thought I'd print out and I just read out some of the things that caught my eye in this article, and it's published in the European Conservatives. The theologian Karl Radner may have done more to undermine the integrity of Catholic orthodoxy at higher levels of theological scholarship than any other member among the Nouvelle Theologie Cognoscenti. Though it's difficult to say who deserves that particular accolade, as the 20th century provided so much competition. Be that as it may, Ranner famously made a remark with which I have found myself in increasingly agreement as time rolls on and the decay of the institutional church is ever more evident. The Christian of the future will be a mystic or will not exist at all. So just one thing that really caught my eye here. Many today, looking around at the spiritual wasteland that is the West, seek to satiate their deepest religious thirsts by turning to romantic ideas like pre-Christian paganism, nature worship, and New Age spirituality. Otherwise, they look east to the mysticisms of Asia, especially those of Buddhism and Hinduism, both of which have added advantage of easily accommodating their individualism, solipsism, and anthropological dualism, which have colonized the West mind since the so-called Enlightenment. I drew myself into all these spiritualities. In fact, a sequence that culminated in my conversion to Catholic Christianity on the south coast of India in my late teens, and I'm certain that God drew me out of the West that I might encounter his church beyond its visibly corrupt and decadent Occidental condition. In crossing the threshold of hope, John Paul II speculated that many Westerners had turned to Buddhism because practices of Carmelite spirituality hadn't been properly disseminated among the faithful. Had they been taught such practices, he suggested, people would have seen that whatever they'd been looking for in Eastern mysticism was already present in the Christian spiritual tradition. Now, I've read John of the Cross, Teresa of Avila, and Brother Roger of the Resurrection, and Edith Stein. Carmelite spirituality, which I deeply admire, is a very monastic spirituality, and it's difficult to see how it's applicable to the life in the world. Admittedly, this gap was somewhat bridged by St. Teresa of Lisieux's autobiography, which hugely influenced lay spirituality. Nonetheless, it doesn't seem sufficient to tell religiously hungry Westerners that they need not become disciples of Shri Shri Ravi Shankar, as they can just read John of the Cross and thereby create an oasis in the spiritual desert produced by Mr. O'Murphy's weekly sermons on climate change. We must spiritually engage with the situation at hand. As the West continues to plummet into its now unavoidable civilization collapse, we shall see a rise of all kinds of superstitions and witchcraft, which will likely serve to bestow a religious character upon a technocratic age of biogovernment and transhumanism that we've now entered. The Church's hierarchy has not only shown every sign of celebrating this diabolic trajectory, which it doesn't even begin to understand, but even if it became critical of it, it remains completely unequipped to engage with the new global regime in its prophetic way that's desperately needed. Those who see that we're in for something quite different to the interminable capital P progress and liberalism promised to deliver are increasingly looking for spiritual awakening that will reconcile us to God and his creation that we've defaced. And the Church stands at the sidelines looking baffled at such people. I'm going to post the whole link to this article below. You have to read it end to end. It's a masterpiece. I just said yes, every paragraph, yes, yes, yes. You know, we talk about St. John of the Cross and Eastern spirituality. If people read Valentin Tomberg, a Catholic, you will read his journey towards Catholicism, and he talks about it in Meditations on the Tarot, which is nothing about the esoteric and superstitious reading of cards, nothing at all. But I do recommend that people read Valentin Tomberg because he talks about this exact point on Carmelite spirituality. And where's the book? You know, I do recommend people read Praying with the Heart, Jeanne Corey. I suppose the point I'm making, and people are listening to me, is we have these treasures in the Catholic Church, which sadly our hierarchy and those that should be teaching us and leading us have thrown away. We entered the pandemic, and you know, and Sebastian makes the point, some English bishops even begged the government to close churches. You know, they ran away in fear. Fear. I'm afraid to preach the gospel. I'm afraid to say, you know, Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, and our faith is life-giving. It is the way to heaven. And Sebastian is just making so much sense in his article. So, you know, please read it. I'm going to link it there below. But you know, it's time for the church to wake up and to bring out into the church exactly what he is making the point there, the treasures of our mysticism. You know, I agree with Karl Rahner. You know, the Catholics in the future, we're either going to be mystics or we're not going to be Christians at all, because it's now we're going to have to take up the challenge of really taking to heart the task of being Catholics. I mean, this is serious, guys. We have to take to heart this task of knowing our faith, knowing Christ's presence in his church, knowing how to evangelize with his spirit, knowing the spiritual life as masters. And that's and I say this humbly, this is something that we need to do, because people are just not going to believe people that are half-baked anymore. This pathetic seminary formation that we've been given priests for years in Ireland, sadly, and in other seminaries in Maynooth, look what it's turned out. And even priests themselves were saying, you know, we weren't informed. You know, it was all this ideology and that ideology. If you see what's going on in Maynooth, the program of formation, some of the stuff that they have in Maynooth, I mean, you would wonder what is going on. I mean, what is going on? Instead of being, the first task of a priest is to be a man of prayer, a man of God, know how to pray, and we don't need more confusion coming from the priesthood or the hierarchy. So anyway, I'm just going to post a link to this article below. I do think it makes a very, very, a vital point. It's important for the church to rediscover its role, not primarily as authority and making true claims, but to bind the intellect and conscience of its members, but its role as the path, the way, as early Christians called the religion. It's really important. It's really important. So I just want to give this encouragement to those to take up this challenge to know your faith, to really dig into faith. And I'm going to make one point, really important point. Christ wants this. He wants to have a deeper relationship with you. He wants to bring you into to know him more and more. And our Catholic spirituality is deep and rich and fertile. People are running off to yoga and mysticism in the East, and Hinduism and Buddhism and New Age, and God knows what they're heading towards. And I think it's important, if people have a time, get this book, The Gentle Traditionalist by Roger Buck, and his sequel. And it really opens up a conversation on a lot of these points, and we need to bring them forth into discussion in the church. The faith is serious. The faith is deadly serious. This is our eternal salvation at stake, and people just think it is blasé. This neo-theology of post-Vatican II. Oh, it's not. God look after everything. Don't worry. You don't need to work in your spiritual life. You don't need to worry about sin and all this. Look what's happened in the church. Anyway, God bless you. Take care. Bye bye.